The bloodline was the ruling line because it was priest kings who ruled. It's very likely that some of the very prominent and very strange religious characters in medieval times were members of the order. They did manifest the qualities of those of the order. From my study of history, that appears to be the case. From the 6th and up into the 9th century, there were missionaries, Irish missionaries, were keeping contact with continental sounding monasteries all over Europe. But these monasteries, because I think of the influence of the order, were monasteries of Pelagian, not of the Christianity of the order. Pelagian were eventually condemned as the arch-heretic. He was the first, the greatest heretic, according to Christian history. But in fact, Pelagianism was the ancient religion which Christ brought back, which was, I think, altered by the Romans, by St. Paul particularly, to suit the Roman imperium, so that the Catholic religion, Catholic apostolic religion, became the new Roman Empire in the 5th century after the breakup, the so-called breakup of the Roman Empire. It was originally the task of each member of the order to be a compendium of all knowledge, all known knowledge. That was the reason for the long term of training. If humanity was totally wiped out, except for one individual, he should be capable of re-establishing everything from his known resources. Now, because in the last 2 centuries, because of the exponential increase in knowledge and techniques and skills, medicine, everything, it wouldn't be within the compass of a single human mind, or you wouldn't have the time to train someone to encompass everything. The system of triads was developed, whereby 3 were brought together.
Ben, Milo, and Casimir formed such a triad. Because of their telepathic powers, each was able to draw on the other's knowledge. But because of the increase over the last 50 years in radio and telecommunication, telepathy has become impossible. According to Ben, all human communication, language itself, is suffering severe damage.
And that is why it was a primary function of the order to preserve language. Language is a kind of magic by which we trigger off telepathic transmission of messages between us. And if you look about the world today, we are becoming more and more confused, more and more cut off from one another. We're all living in our own little realms of unknowing. This is the great dilemma of our times. We will never have an end to cruelty and war and oppression and greed and all these evils that we see bubbling all the time. This is a thing which I believe very strong. I know it, I don't just believe it. I know it, I see it about me and I sense it. There has to be a great revolution of the spirit. Otherwise, the world is finished. It doesn't need the atomic bomb. It doesn't need any of the worst horrors of modern technology, the smart bomb, mustard gas, nerve gas. We will destroy ourselves in some other fashion. But it's essential the amnesia is got rid of. That we get back to a state of primitive thinking, clear. Technology must be brought under proper control. We, in the order, we never condemn technology because it has given great benefits to humanity. It has taken away a lot of suffering and pain and medicine, and it has enabled knowledge to be diffused much better. But at the same time, it has outstripped the development of the spirit. And then the evil side of technology. We see its results everywhere. So this revolution of the spirit will have to be achieved. And this time it will have to be achieved without the help of the order. So the order has ceased, in my opinion, to have any further function in society. When people say to me, "Oh, do you not feel in despair because you think you're the last of the order?" And I quote Tennyson. Tennyson says, "The old order changeth, yielding place to new, and God fulfills himself in many ways, lest one good custom should corrupt the world." We must change. A new order will arrive. A new order will emerge. It's either that or total destruction. And when I say total destruction, it doesn't mean absolute annihilation, but the ending of things as we understand. The fundamental training of the order was to achieve balance, not to discard new knowledge, not to discard old knowledge. Keep a balance between them. Keep a proper balance in everything. That faculty has been restored. Order depends on a balance of forces. You can't have a cosmos, as Einstein says, designed by an idiot. There has to be order. In fact, the meaning of cosmos is order. It's against chaos, which is disorder. The balance between these two forces must be achieved. As a natural law, as a fundamental law that we know inherently, we know intuitively that is. I've been told this very often, and I said it myself, that if you had scoured the world for the most unsuitable candidate to be a member of the order, I was that person. so far as my mental attitudes, general disposition is concerned, that I always have within me an inborn skepticism, and B, a sense of the ludicrous, which made me look on all rituals and practices as being games playing, and the carryover and other childish attitudes into adulthood. I enjoyed it and still do. He kissed me under the Moorish wall, and I thought, well, as well him as another. And then I asked my eyes to ask again, yes. And then he asked me, would I? Yes, to say yes, with a mountain flower. And first I put my arms around him, yes, and drove him down to me, so he could feel my breasts all perfume. Yes, and my heart was going like mad, and yes, I said yes, I will, yes. And the way I look at life is what distinguishes, say, great writers like Joyce from others is that they are yea-sayers to life. The last sentence in Ulysses is yes, yes, yes. Molly Bloom is saying yes to life. So I was taught that yes, that we must say yes. We must take the perfect. The other side lies death and destruction, which this created us. We can create death, we can't create life. And man is engaged to the limit of his faculties and abilities in creating death. So great transformation has to be. Otherwise, everything goes. That's the model of the right. So now I continue traveling poetry, which is better than the right.
Well, thank you, Gil. It's customary for people in this miserable position to say how black I am here. In my case, it's literally true, because I haven't been here since 1979, and I'm extremely glad to be here. It's wonderful to discover that this thing which has lingered in my mind as a kind of lingering fantasy is still, in fact, standing. Because when you go to England, it's more miraculous that things are still standing, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to talk to you about this topic, the Ark before Noah, which has been a big adventure, which has converted my life from the dull, tedious, dusty and unexciting life of a normal curator into just the opposite, with hard, endangering consequences. So one of the things that happens if you are a curator in the British Museum is, because the public have the mistaken idea that we are experts, is to identify things which people bring in. And they always make a lot of fuss about how you figure out when you tell them it's Liverpool age or Iron Age or something like this technical side, but what they really want to know is how much they're worth. And we are forbidden by the trustees from ever referring to this matter, so we are experienced in dealing with all sorts of drama. And it happened to me once when I was on duty that a person called Douglas Simmons came in about 1985 with a bag full of antiquities, small antiquities, which was poured onto the desk, and I was the duty officer. And it contained some coins, a couple of lamps, a bit of Chinese stuff, a couple of shabties, and a cuneiform tablet. Well, it might not surprise you to know that I picked up the cuneiform tablet first. And I picked it up, and at first sight I assumed it was going to be an old Babylonian letter. I'm sure you would have the same conclusion in terms of size, shape, dimension, grammatical form, semantic parallels, and so forth. But I lifted it up and started to read it. And this is what came out. I'm going to read the whole of this book out. I should tell you, if you want to read it yourself, this is easily arranged. It's very easily arranged afterwards. Read war. Atra Hasis, pay heed to my advice that you may live forever. Destroy your house, build a boat, spurn property, and save life. Well, not many letters begin that way. And in point of fact, I was able to read it at sight because I had a very demanding teacher who used to hit people and touch them with barbed wire until they learned their signs. And so, recognizing the beginning of the flood story in the Babylonian epic was a doddle for someone who graduated from that classroom. So I realized I had in my hands a piece of the old Babylonian version of the flood story, which is a piece of gold in the world, because everyone is interested in the flood story, and nobody ever gets their hand on an unpublished piece which has never been seen by any other Assyriologist. So I was rather excited about it, and what happened was, he took it away, picked up the lamp, and said, "And what about this?" And when I'd gone through the rest of the material, trembling with excitement and thinking, "Can I borrow this for a while?" and read it, he went, and I didn't see him for the best part of the day. So I knew that this thing was in circulation, and this was before the trustees of the British Museum had produced this handbook about how to knock people to the floor and take over their property for the trustees. So I just let him escape. But I knew that sooner or later it would come back to the British Museum because of important things do. Some of them, for example, are temporarily in the Louvre, but sooner or later they will come back. So the thing is, when I finally got this thing under my control, I had the luxury, to say, of reading it properly, with a good light, and so forth, to get the guts out. And it became apparent that the thing was of 60 lines in length, and although the beginning was exactly the same as the text in the sporadic examples, the rest of it was very startling. Now, knowledge of the flood itself on cuneiform tablets has been in public domain since 1872, when George Smith, the character on the left, for the first time was a modern human being who read a piece of this rock biscuit kind of material from the barbaric background and discovered that he was reading Holy Writ virtually in this peculiar format. And the story goes now, the common record, I'm sure it's true, that he dropped the tablet on the table in his anxiety and started to run around the room, holding his head and making funny squeaking noises, and eventually attempting to remove his clothing. And this has gone down in history as a laughable matter, but it's almost certain that what actually happened was he had an epileptic fit. Because the impact of discovering for the first time that the text of Genesis, which everybody in 19th century London knew by heart, it was in this peculiar arrival form. So George Smith, in 1863, discovered this for the first time. There was a huge glory about it, all sorts of discussion by all sorts of people. I give up your attention to the image of Smith on your left. It has the broad, intelligent forehead, leadership kind of profile, fine beard, lucid, intelligent eyes, and so forth. It's always been this range of characteristics that the Buckingham have looked for in their seriological employees. So the thing is that when Smith published this, he went very lucidly about it and its implications for the biblical story, because it contained not only the approximate parallel, but a much more specific one. For example, the fact that when the flood was completed and creatures were quiet, it saw that 2 birds were released, and that when the third one came back, I mean, it didn't come back, but we knew that something appeared above dry land, which is, of course, what Noah did in the more popular version of the story, best celebrated with Hollywood, and the really good one, which you have to read in the original in Babylonian. So, one of the interesting things about the version that you discovered, that 1873 tablet, it came from the library of Ashurbanipal in the 7th century BC. It was one of the king's own personal copies of his standard literature, although they didn't know that securely at the time. And when Smith made his very quick and very accurate translation, it included a description of what the architect, this the equivalent of Noah in his version of the story, had built. And the description comes out as a cube, that's to say, an object that is the same height, width, and length in all dimensions. So the clergymen, who were extremely worried about the way that the Bible had been undermined and what this might mean for the end of civilization, came back in force saying, well, this is rubbish, this is nothing like the Ark in the Bible, I mean, it's a cube, and the boat that was a cube, it was mad anyway, and they had to say notes to this. And so they were compelled and felt encouraged to dismiss evidence which was unwelcome to them. Of course, they were operating on the assumption that the rumors are so very good like this. I was rather fortunate to find this contemporary photograph, which is what they call researching missions in Google generally. Here it is, exactly as it was, reconstructed in this image according to the text of the Bible. So the situation was that in 1872 and a half, there were people who believed in the Assyrian version, there were people who stuck fast to the Bible, so you had a cube or a coffin, and of course at the same time everybody really knew what Noah's Ark looked like. It's one of these things, there's usually a giraffe looking out the window just to complete it. So in fact, art fanciers, so to speak, had these 3 alternatives at their disposal. So it made it even more astonishing when I had the pleasure to read this tablet, when it turned out the following thing, because the God entity who had discovered the world was going to be destroyed, but decided it wasn't a good matter, and that he picked on some human being to build this lifeboat to rescue all life forms against the waters that would come. And it's also a mystery, actually, why he picked on this Atram Parsis, whose name means extremely intelligent, because however intelligent he might have been, it is clear that Enki didn't trust his knowledge of boat building at all, because in this tablet he tells him all the information you need to know in order to build this boat. In other words, it's one of those boxes from IKEA, which has all the information on a mimeographic handle on the side, so when you take it home, you can build it on your own.
So the first piece of information that came out of reading this tablet was that the boat was round. And I'm fairly secure about most words in the UK because I worked on the paper volumes. I felt that the word kidnapped was under my belt, but I thought I'd make absolutely sure that I hadn't mislearned it because round boats are not something you tend to encounter in your normal life. People remember, of course, that riverine communities all over the world have used round boats which we call coracles, which now are called puffer, and that in ancient Mesopotamia they certainly had boats like this, and it suddenly became a rather intelligible picture that for a Babylonian poet who lived when he wrote that tablet in about 1800 BC, so it's 1,000 years older than the Assyrian version. In writing about the story, conceived of the ark in question, the boat to save lives, as a round coracle boat as people built on the side of the river. And this makes a lot of sense because the thing about the coracle, I've never been in one. You just have to take my word for it. I've been in one once. The reason is I'm the president of the British Coracle Association. Funny thing at all, I don't see why you're sniggering. This is a major tribute to me as a person. I haven't got the gold chain. It's a bit annoying, but they promised me one, and I had to go in one, so I've been in one, so I can talk about it with a great deal of familiarity. And the thing about these boats I know from many years' experience is that they don't sink. If you've got the job of catching up all these male and females and putting them in the boat, you don't have to go from Portsmouth to New York. All you have to do is float. And the coracle doesn't have a front or a back, it just floats, and they float beautifully. So that is why the poet who wrote this story, trying to visualise the thing in a realistic way, decided it was going to be a giant coracle. It certainly was going to be a giant coracle. The surface area of the plan is given, it's 3,600 square metres, so bigger than this room. And in this IKEA list of instructions, he tells him of the materials he will need, that's to say, the rope, which is wrapped around to build the body of the boat, the ribs made of wood, and the bitumen to coat it inside and out to make it waterproof. He not only tells him he will need these materials, but he actually tells him how much of them he will need in order to complete the job. So this is where it becomes something very remarkable. So, this is what, of course, Iraqi coracles look like, or used to look like. The one at the top on your left is a fairly modern one of the last ones ever made, probably. And the one below that is the runner-up to the Guinness Book of Records award for the most males ever stuffed in a single coracle with success. And in fact, they were disqualified because one of them was a boy, and they thought that was cheating. So that's them. And then in the middle is drawn from a Latin slide, which was given to us in the museum by an old lady from her father's collection. And we had it blown up, and you can't see very clearly on this screen, but you've got two women who are doing the grand tour and have clearly been persuaded by some slick organiser of holiday activities to go in one of these boats and sample life in real, and they all look terrified. So the thing is that the coracle in Iraq is known in ancient times, it's on the sculptures for example, but also from many anecdotal and photographic pieces of evidence from the 19th and 20th century as well, even though I think it's now disappeared. So the other photograph which I will now show you is this, which is from a pair of Langston slide pictures and part of a sequence of someone who photographed the construction of a coracle on the banks of the river Iraq in about 1920. And here you can see, in principle, how this boat is built. And what you do is you have to have this great quantity of rope, and you have a pith. The pith which comes from the trunk of a palm tree, which is twisted and twisted and twisted until it becomes a thick rope, and it is exceptionally strong. And the basic way in which the coracle is to be made is you draw it out on the ground in a great circle, and as it comes back to the beginning, the next bit is laid on top of the previous one, and it is stitched north to south, and you go round and stitch north to south, and then the third on top of the second, and you end up with a great floppy basket. And when you've done that, you have to have ribs which fit round the frame, which is laced to the hole, and then the bitumen is applied. So something very interesting happened to me, probably unique situation. The central portion of this tablet is full of numbers and very technical, and I'm frantically enumerate. So I got a bit of help with dealing with the numbers, and I never built any boats at all in London, so I wasn't really on top of it, but I discovered in the library of the Ethnographical Institute in our museum that a man called Hornell wrote in 1920 an account of how these coracles are built, which this is an illustration by somebody else. So this Hornell was a very worthy person, a great boat historian, and he was from Scotland, and he was a man of a very small number of words. His sentences are extremely terse and very difficult to understand. And the Babylonian, which is more or less preserved, is very terse and difficult to understand in different areas. So I had this unique situation that I used Hornell's description from 1920 AD to understand the narrative written in the 18th century BC about how to build these boats, and at the same time use the Babylonian to understand what he meant in English. And eventually both things became mutually intelligible and the whole sequence emerged. So I'm not going to go through all this in laborious detail. It was tempting to do this and then perhaps suggest over wine there might be a short paper of test questions for you all to fill out. But there is one thing I want you to retain from this experience, though it may be for many years to come. The measurements of the materials are called, of course, given in Babylonian measurements, not in English. They weren't that advanced. So when it came to the rope needed to wind round to make this boat, this god Enki explained to Atrahasis that he would need 14,430 sutu measures of rope in order to build this boat. I thought this was supposed to be the Oriental Institute. Somewhere I'm supposed to go, or something like that. I'm rather disappointed.